All right, we are recording.
We are recording. All right. So we're talking about, this is Bronson, and we got Jason on here as well. We're going to be talking about different fitness programs. What are the differences and what you can use them for based on what you're looking at. So we've had discussions recently just between the two of us about what is the best program. And us as humans, we like to follow, to label things, put things in boxes and kind of go, this is the one that works, so this must be the best. But we have to understand that there's different goals, different experiences, different backgrounds. There's all kinds of differences in individuality that goes into those decisions for people. So what may be best for me right now may not, one, be best for me a year from now, wasn't the best for me a year ago, and then I may never have something on my list that's good for me right now or whenever that's good for you, Jason, right? Like you have completely different experiences and backgrounds and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Yep.
So when we're talking about things that are different, partially to help everybody understand that there is really no wrong thing out there. It's finding what works best for you and where you're going with your fitness journey. And this really plays a role when we talk about top tier, in that there's so many options at top tier, right? So if I'm a member at top tier and I come in the door, well, do I want to do CrossFit? Do I want to do kettlebells? Do I want to do kin stretch and work on my mobility? Do I want to do Olympic lifting, powerlifting, strongman, right? The shape class, which is more bodybuilding focused. Do I want to do, there's just all these different things that we can do. So how do I pick what is the right thing for me and where I want to go? So where do you want to start with that? You want to talk about like what are some of the most common programs? And we're not even talking about programming per se. We're talking about like the different modalities or types of exercise and fitness. We're not even talking about the difference between, linear programming, undulating, conjugate. We're not even talking about that. That's probably a whole different discussion. So, but just talking about fitness in general, Jason, what are some of the more common sport or modalities within the fitness world that you see people doing and why?
Um, so before I answer that question directly, analogy I often use with discussing programming is I compare it to medicine, like
Mhm.
pharmaceuticals. I personally don't believe that there's any bad drug out there. There's just improperly prescribed medication for the wrong person at the wrong time, sort of stuff. Like all drugs they're all tools, and they have specific purposes, and it's up to the professional and the informed patient to make sure that they're matching what their needs are to the medication. And same thing is true for following programs and exercise, as well as sort of creating programming for clients and groups. I don't believe that there is uh, this this overarching idea of there being bad programs. It's just maybe someone picked the wrong program for them at that point in their life, or it was the wrong program for the individual. It should have been applied to a different client or with different goals or something along those lines. Um, and then the other thing I tend to tell people is that the best program for you is the one that you will follow consistently. And so, to your point, Bronson, there's a million variables that
Right.
determine whether somebody is going to actually follow through with something for a longer period of time. And a lot of it doesn't have anything to do with science and logic and research, kind of stuff. Um, yeah. So going back to your question, sort of what are some pretty common programs that people eating, search for in the world of fitness? Um, they're usually oriented around specific generalized goals. So
Mhm.
many people are showing up to a facility and they want to simply look different, right? They want their body to visually look different than it does, leaner, more muscular, less body fat, right? And then you got other people who performance, focused, right? They want to maybe just be as strong as they possibly can be, and they're maybe they have some interest in how their body looks, but that's not their priority, right? It's getting a certain kind of performance out of their body. And then you have also groups of people who, um, just want to feel good, that they're searching for what health is for them,
Right.
and they live in a body that is uncomfortable and depressed, maybe joint aches and pains, maybe even there's a medical diagnosis of a disease of some sort,
Mhm.
and these people, rightfully so, are looking to simply feel well, because who the hell wants to walk around every day in a body that just every moment feels
Right.
crappy? And so those are three big categories. The way we look, the way we perform, and the way we feel are
Mhm.
often govern the direction people go.
Right. Now, what do you say? Because this is something that I think there's a distinction in the wording and how you say it, but I think also just opinion and how everybody looks at things differently. When we're talking about CrossFit, okay, because I mean, that's where the basis of what functional fitness and kind of what we do. Um, I used to say, and I've changed. I used to say that um, everyone should do CrossFit, right? And then it was more along the lines, as I got a little more experience, it was more along the lines of anyone can do CrossFit. And then it was more along the lines of CrossFit is a solution that anyone can use, right? Because the different kind of evolution of understanding all of these factors that we're putting into it. When I first got into CrossFit, it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Everyone needs to do this, right? And then as you get a little more experience, you realize, okay, everyone can do this, right? That doesn't mean everyone should or everyone will, and you have to understand and be okay with that. And now it's more along the lines of it's a tool in the toolbox, right? CrossFit's a great opportunity for a lot of people, but like you said, some people may just be focused on strength. Like I don't personally in my journey along my journey right now, I'm not doing CrossFit, right? I'm doing more bodybuilding, more aesthetic based stuff because that's kind of where I'm at. I've been doing CrossFit for almost 10 years. I've gotten about as physically fit as I want to be, as I feel like I need to be right now. And I had different goals, strength goals and aesthetic goals. That's kind of where my focus is. So I'm not doing Metcons on a regular basis. I'm not doing a lot of that general fitness, broad, time domains and modalities. But someone, may have a different goal and that's perfectly fine for them. So, I think that evolution is something that a lot of people, particularly coaches just getting started or people who are just getting into CrossFit are kind of like, oh my God, CrossFit's the best thing. Everyone needs to do this. Um, is that something similar that you went through when you first kind of did it or?
Oh yes, I mean, actually, when I got into CrossFit, it was at a point in my life where I didn't even want to. Ironically, mine's a weird story, but the short of it is my wife was interested, and I was in the chiropractic office treating a lot of CrossFitters. At that point, I just had
Right.
a lot of negativity towards CrossFit because my perception at the time was I keep getting all these broken people that, in my opinion, were breaking themselves
Mhm.
um, through just poor choices. Yeah, and so once I got involved with CrossFit, it was originally only to really protect my wife. I was like, I'm not letting you go there by yourself. Like it was that kind of attitude.
Mhm.
Um, and and then once the walls, were broken down a bit emotionally, which took a while for that to happen for me. I definitely I started to realize why people like it so much, and it is it's still, I would say that out of all the different experiences I've had in sport, it was one of the more transformative ones for me, for sure. And I did, uh, go from a position of, um, criticizing CrossFit
Mhm.
to uh, more not glorifying it. I didn't go that far extreme, but seeing, like, to your point, like there's a great value here, that there are a lot of people who would really benefit and enjoy this.
Right.
But then as I went through it, it's like my pendulum when it started way over to the left, it swung pretty far to the right eventually, and then it started to come back towards the middle of those two positions over the years. As I started to learn and see through experience too, the direct experience, that the intensity that CrossFitters tend to use on a day-to-day basis can also dig themselves into a hole
Mhm.
metabolically and health-wise, and precipitate injuries, not necessarily because they had bad coaching or were, using, intentionally using bad technique or anything like that. It was just the sheer accumulation of all the days and hours of, balls to the wall, high intensity effort that I started to watch, that have consequences for people that outweighed the benefits in some cases.
Right.
Um,
And that's a common thing though. I think that's more an individual, or should I say a mass, I guess how depending on how you look at it, it's an individual mindset, but then there's such a mass of people that have the mindset on intensity being what's important.
I mean, the
Because you see
fitness
that,
industry as a whole kind of,
right,
I would argue the culture of the industry sort of still pushes that message that,
right, go hard or
balls
go
to the
home, right?
wall. Yep, exactly.
Yeah, and you see, and I, I'm sure in your experience, I know in my experience, I've dealt with just as many CrossFitters who have chronic issues and injuries as I have with bicyclists, with runners, with football players, soccer players, baseball players, whatever, right? Because it's that mentality of just keep going, keep going, keep going. And no matter what activity is, right? Powerlifters are the same way, Olympic lifters are the same way. If you don't do it, if you don't if you don't change your mentality about what you're doing and do things smarter, you're eventually going to wear down and get broken.
Yeah.
Um, so in my progression, um, of let's just say starting with CrossFit. Well, let's just say before that. So before CrossFit, I was more of the go to the gym and lift weights. It was more of a social thing for me, right? I wasn't really doing that much work. I was there with a bunch of guys. We go move some weight around, look at the girls at the gym, and have a good time. It wasn't really getting much done. Started doing CrossFit. That was it for a while. Like CrossFit was it for several years. Um, through my experience with CrossFit, and this is something that's common, I'm sure you've seen before, is I was exposed to more powerlifting. I was exposed to Olympic lifting. I was exposed to kettlebells. I was exposed to all these other gymnastics and all these other things. And so even within the time that I was purely CrossFit, I still had phases where I was focusing more on getting better at one or the other of some other modality. So I think that's a key point too, is going back to what we talked about at the beginning, there's different things that you can focus on, but still improve your fitness. It doesn't have to be just one thing,
Yeah.
right? Is that what's your experience with that? You've gone through all kinds of different things, right?
Yeah, I mean, so martial arts was the first half of my life. Um, some of that being competitive, and then I got, involved in powerlifting, which was actually introduced to me through a doctor as a rehabilitation from a serious injury I had in an MMA fight, and uh, and then powerlifting eventually led me to CrossFit, and CrossFit then opened um, gave me opportunities to really learn much deeper, like weightlifting
Mhm.
and gymnastics. So I had some exposure to the sport of weightlifting, but very little, and certainly very little instruction. But it was nice in the world of CrossFit that ended up being in. We had weightlifting, athletes who were high level weightlifting coaches, and so they weren't trying to teach us how to become better CrossFitters. I had the opportunity to just sort of pull out a segment of that experience, i.e., weightlifting, and let's just focus on that for a while. And that was like fun, like that was a nice break. And in the world of CrossFit, weightlifting is a big part of it. So
Yep.
it only makes sense that if I took the time to learn how to do that well, improve my mobility, which sucked really bad at the time. Um, these things would end up paying off in my overall fitness experience. And it gave me new challenges, right? Because after a while, at least my personality, after a while, like I get kind of bored with things. And so once I stop feeling like I'm learning and maybe I'm not being challenged as much, I start to
Mhm.
lose some interest.
Yeah,
And so it's a nice segue into a slightly different activity, because then it's almost like I get to be a white belt again, like I get to relearn the basics and build again. That's
yeah.
exciting for me at least.
That's a good thing. I like how you said that you get to be a white belt again, because one of the dynamics of fitness is that when you're first getting started with something, almost anything that you do is going to give you improvement. Doesn't matter if you've never done anything before. If you walk into a gym and just walk around the track for 5 minutes, that's going to be more, and you're going to get something out of that more than if you've never, than what you're doing sitting on the couch. So doing anything is going to help you get better. So what that means in translation is that when you go from what you're doing, even if, like for me, I've been doing CrossFit for 8 years, 10 years, right? If I've been doing that and I go to something different, if I decide to go to a purely gymnastics focused program, anything that I do that's that specific in that program is I'm going to see a greater improvement when I first get started than after I've been doing it for maybe a year. I have to work harder to see those improvements. So when you do change from one thing to another, it kind of gives you a boost almost in that area. Then when you go back to what you were doing before, you've kind of added a layer of improvement on top of what you were doing before. And it kind of helps. You can almost kind of step your progress by jumping back and forth a little bit from different things and having different focuses.
Yeah, that's a great system if you can be the learner who values delayed gratification.
Yeah.
So many people, um, and I mean, I've had this experience also in my own life, so I'm not special in any way.
Mm-hmm.
But so many people, when they make progress in a certain aspect of their fitness, and then learn that, hey, there's this other area that maybe we can improve upon. Let's spend some extra time here. They struggle psychologically with stepping away from the old system out of usually fear
Yeah.
that whatever they earned will leave like completely. And so it's a common practice when people get sucked into the fitness world that they will often over time try and take on too much, like that they've got one system that got them to where they are. Oh, they have an interest in this other thing, but they'll often rationalize in their that they have to have both. It's like, now I got to layer this one on top of the other,
Right.
because if I don't, all that work I did, over the last year completely goes away. Even though
Right.
that's not at all how it works in the real world. And that's more of a mindset psychological problem than it is a programming problem. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah. So it's hard, when so many people, they want the instant gratification, and then they also have that fear-based response that it just, it'll go away in a month, all everything.
Right.
This last year and a half, gone. 30 days. Like
Right.
nothing.
Well, it's crazy. Right. It's crazy, right? So just to use that as an example. So I haven't been doing CrossFit workouts for a while. Um, I haven't done, I think in the last year, I maybe have done cleans 3 times, right? Because I've been focusing on more powerlifting, more bodybuilding kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But my weight hasn't changed. My technique hasn't gotten worse, right? Once that skill is developed, you don't like I've got the skill. It's like riding a bike. Like you don't forget how to ride a bike. I may not get better at my cleans. My technique isn't going to get better, but I still know how to do a clean.
Right.
It's not like it's going to just disappear and go away,
Right.
right? So I can move on to something else and learn something different, or practice or develop somewhere else that could eventually help my clean. Like if I get stronger, even though my technique on the clean hasn't improved, the next time I go back and start focusing on cleans, I'll be able to clean more
Yeah.
because now I'm stronger. So the central nervous system, the skill development hasn't been lost, but I've added the physiological improvement that makes my overall performance increase.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
So
Eva with the left elbow injury, it took weightlifting away from me for a great while, and so I just focused on and having fun around what I could, getting stronger around movements that weren't causing me pain, and then put my energy in terms of the injury around like getting help with doctors and professionals and trying to solve the problem, right? And so, but
Yeah.
so, fast forward, so I didn't perform power cleans. I don't know, maybe let's just call it like 5 times in a year, maybe.
Mhm.
Um, and so incredibly infrequent practice, but um, 3 months ago or something, I tested my power clean 1 rep max because I just happened to be feeling really good on a day where I was practicing in general,
Yeah.
and ended up hitting a lifetime PR. Oh, like, how does that happen if I have to always practice cleans? That's not,
Right.
I clearly doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
And so maybe the other activities that I chose to engage in all sort of synergistically work together in a way where I got this, you know, nice result that wasn't even like hyper focused.
And that's where we can segue into a whole different conversation if we want to about the benefit of technique versus just trying to go hard or go strong, get strong all the time. And you can play the two of those off of each other. If someone is dealing with a technique issue, I would rather have them get the technique down and get the skill, because the skill is going to last longer than any physiological change, right? If I learn how to do something properly and I get to a point where I can execute that as second nature, then once I get to that point, I don't have to focus on it as much, right? But if I try to work up to a 400-pound deadlift, a 500-pound deadlift, a 400-pound squat, whatever, if I don't do that, if I don't do something to keep pushing that, that will go away over time.
Right. The actual load.
The
Yeah.
actual load and ability to push the weight. So
Right.
technique lasts longer than physiological changes. So for people who are always focused on get stronger, go faster, they're doing it backwards. If they can get more efficient and execute properly, that will last them way longer in their fitness career. It will give them way more advantage so that when they do develop the strength and the ability to that metabolic performance, then it matches and then they can progress faster than if they're just focusing on strength and metabolic performance all the time.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Because then you can switch around and get better at a bunch of different stuff, but you never lose the skill stuff.
Um, Completely agree. And this also makes me think of uh, the name Ido Portal is very popular leader amongst a movement called movement culture.
Mhm.
And he's by no means the only person involved, but he's sort of the celebrity of the group, we'll call him. And it's a worldwide movement. And essentially, what that movement argues is that the formality of programs doesn't always have to be rigid, right? And that particularly in Western culture, we're very like left brain thinkers, and so we're we're searching for, like, we got a problem, like I want to get strong, right? And now I'm searching for the solution. Well, how do I get strong?
Mhm.
And that solution should look like a set of rules, right? Like, here are the exercises we do. Here's are your sets, and blah 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 blah. And so the fitness culture has us bought into this notion that everything has to be formalized in training. But the Ido Portal's movement culture really shows us that the play of human movement can also be a great part of our success and our evolution too. That uh, many people reach many goals, uh, physical goals particularly, by simply being interested in trying to learn something, and
Mhm.
then playfully exploring that with no real formal approach. That
Right.
that it's not a periodized program per se, that it is just, I have this goal and I want to reach it. And so I'm going to start playing with different ways of moving my body and learning how to manipulate certain stuff so that I'm moving in the direction of accomplishing these physical goals.
Yeah.
But along the way, it's just like kids on a playground, kids growing, running, around and outside doing physical things. So many skills were learned by those children, not by having an adult yelling at them, telling them exactly what to do and what way to do it. And
Mhm.
they did it through exploration. And so I'm a big fan of people incorporating that, um, because I do find, and this is just my own personal bias, I do find that so many people hire professionals in the fitness as if we're supposed to have all the answers for them. That if I give them this plan, then as long as I do this exactly as written, then I'll get exactly what I want. But any of us who have ever followed any plan learn over time that that plan is a very rough draft. And there are constant,
Yeah.
needs for variation from that plan, many of which couldn't have been anticipated. Um,
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
I like exploration and play in the process.
Right. And one of the reasons that works, going back to the central nervous system piece, is, you know, you there's a connection between the brain and the body, and being able to feel. You can't feel what's going on if you're not experiencing it. So you have to do it. You have to play around and figure out some of the deepest understandings. That's even the right way to say that. Some of the deepest understanding that I've gotten on how the body moves is just figuring things out on my own, stretching, rolling out, doing different things, feeling, okay, if I do this with my hip while I'm doing this movement, where do I feel it? If I try this weird body position, where do I feel it? Okay, I saw this guy do this. What if I do that and then twist my arm here, or do, like, playing around with just what are the positions I can get into? Where do I feel stretches or activations or whatever? But if you don't take that time to develop that mind body connection, then you're always going to be stuck in doing what you said is that rigid, this is just how you do it. And then you never kind of expand outside of that and make your own kind of path.
Yep.
Um, let's talk about, we kind of started with this, let's get back to it. So let's talk about the differences between CrossFit, powerlifting, Olympic lifting, kettlebells, we got gymnastics, and then maybe some endurance stuff. Like, what are the major differences when we talk about all those different sports? We'll call them sports
In terms
or
of what
activities.
they focus on, or
Yeah,
like,
what are
or
some of the
how.
differences? So for anybody that's listening that may not know what they are or know kind of what the differences between them are.
Okay, so
We got a few minutes.
let's start with weightlifting, powerlifting, since
Okay.
one's in the Olympics. So weightlifting is in the Olympics, and so that involves two events: snatch, clean, and jerk. It is what's classified as a speed strength sport. So max, like people who do weightlifting like complexity. They like highly skilled stuff. And what I usually tell people that differentiates weightlifting from powerlifting is weightlifting, you have to learn to move really heavy weights with relaxed muscles. And then powerlifting, you learn to move really heavy weights with very tense muscles.
Okay.
Um, and a simple analogy would be like throwing a ball, right? If most people, I'm sure, listening to this, thrown balls before. Well, if you grab the ball really hard, tense all your muscles up, and try and throw, it's not going to go very far. But if you learn to coordinate the whole body and with the arm, ball goes really fast, really far. And so weightlifting is like learning to throw really well, whereas powerlifting, we don't need to learn how to throw, right? We can just push and pull something
Mhm.
while staying tense. So powerlifting is way simpler to learn, and much less complex. So I'd say it's more open to beginners than weightlifting tends to be.
Okay.
And then CrossFit is sort of like taking all the I think of CrossFit, ignoring their definition of highly varied, time
Right.
and total domains, all that stuff. Like, I just think of CrossFit as, we're gonna take a wide variety of exercise tools, and we're just gonna combine them in various ways, so that we're always exploring new combinations of stuff and a wide variety of movement.
Mhm.
And so people who want variety would love CrossFit in many cases. Um, and then strongman is a sport where you're mimicking like farm labor, hard, construction workers, like all the practical real world strength stuff that we would be doing in tribes to support each other and survive. Like, that's the sport of strongman. And then kettlebell is sort of this weird combination of, I call it like kind of strongman and weightlifting combined. Like, in kettlebell is a very awkward, cumbersome object,
No.
but I would argue that they're easier to learn than many barbell things.
Mhm.
And they do a wonderful job of allowing the lay person in particular to feel like over time they're getting stronger, but also more athletic. That it's not just tense muscles and just strict strength, but
Yeah.
it's more fluid, similar to weightlifting, but nowhere near as complex.
Yeah. I feel like if I had to choose, if I could only have one piece of exercise equipment in my life, it would be kettlebells.
100%,
You know what I mean?
hands
Absolutely.
down.
I mean, yeah, it's the most
E-
well-rounded, I think, of all the equipment that's out there. Like you can do so much with it.
Dude, like, when I got into CrossFit, I had to learn weightlifting. So that was
Mhm.
like a huge problem at the beginning. But taking that away, like, my ability to perform reasonably well in CrossFit in the first few months of me being exposed to it, like, shocked people. They're like, "What did you do?" I'm like, "I just deadlifted and squatted, and I use kettlebells a lot." So, there's a stupid kind of strength you develop from getting really good at kettlebell stuff,
Yep. Yep.
that it I lived it. It bleeds
Yeah.
into anything I ever want to do. It's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Achieve.
and this is a total different topic. We could probably just talk about this at another point, but with kettlebells, unlike anything else, there's so much unilateral stuff that you do with it, and it's just about everything you do is core to extremity. So there's so much core activation that you have to learn, and proprioception that you have to learn, and how to control your body to make that kettlebell do what you want it to do. That translates to literally everything else that you would want to do sport wise.
Absolutely.
So yeah. All right. So we got kettlebells, and then we got we did powerlifting, strongman, weightlifting, kettlebells. What about
CrossFit.
gymnastics? What's that all about?
Gymnastics uh is fun. It can be fun. Like, it's a great foundation for learning how to use your body, right?
Mhm.
And so, like, now, in the world of CrossFit, we use the word gymnastics differently in CrossFit than the sport of gymnastics does. The sport of gymnastics laughs at us. They're like, "Oh, okay, like, you guys are doing gymnastics. Okay, yeah, sure you are." It's like, they're in a whole nother realm of gymnastics in the sport of gymnastics. But in the world of CrossFit and sort of fitness, the low level gymnastics that we do in terms of low level skills are still quite hard for the average person. And, newsflash, we live in our own bodies. So maybe it'd be a good idea to learn how to use our own bodies well, without a piece of equipment, right? And so gymnastics at the level that I practice anyhow, like that lower skilled stuff, makes my body feel good. It's
Yeah.
a great tool for developing relative strength and really great body awareness.
Right, right. And for anybody listening that doesn't know what we mean by gymnastics, the difference in gymnastics as sport versus gymnastics and functional fitness or CrossFit is in gymnastics for CrossFit functional fitness, basically what we're saying is body weight exercise. That's basically what we're talking about. That includes lunges, air squats, sit-ups, that kind of stuff, right? We're talking about just moving your body in a way that creates some intensity and stress, and develops all the stuff. Um, all right, so how does somebody determine which of all of these options is best for them?
So if they have access, so I'll give a couple answers. One is if you did have access to a facility like top tier, you could just simply go there and try out these things, right? Like you listen to, a video like we're making now and get an idea of the overview of these things, but that's just information. That doesn't really tell you whether you're going to enjoy the experience or not. So be nice if you could go somewhere and just try stuff out to really figure out what interests you the most. Now,
Mhm.
if you don't have that option, probably one of another great places to start is just this determine either alone or with help of a professional what your goals are, and then that professional um, can give advice as to what kind of programs might help you reach that goal. But even in that scenario, there's still going to have to be an emotional buy-in for someone to be consistent over time,
Right.
right? So even though you and I could give someone that piece of advice, like, "Hey, sounds like powerlifting would be a good fit for you," person could go to three different powerlifting gyms and have three very different experiences within those facilities.
Mhm.
So the knowing the goal is important, but it's not necessary in the early stages if we're just looking for what you're going to enjoy, which is
Right.
has to be
Because
part of the process.
yeah, because like we said, when you're first getting started, if you've never done anything before, it doesn't matter what you do. Anything that you do is going to provide some benefit. So if you come into a powerlifting gym and start there, if you go to Olympic lifting gym and start there, if you go to a CrossFit gym and start there, if you go to a bodybuilding gym and start there, you've not done anything. You don't have anything to build on, so you're starting fresh. Anything you do is going to benefit you. What is then most important is what are you going to enjoy and what are you going to come back and do again, right? Because that's
Absolutely.
what's more important. At some point in time, particularly if you're focused in one area, if I've never done anything, I go to a powerlifting gym and I see benefit, I'm having a blast, things are great. I'm going to get to a point where I'm kind of not necessarily maxed out, but I'm at a higher limit of specificity in what I'm doing, and I'm not getting as much benefit from the work I'm doing at that powerlifting gym. Maybe I need to go to a Olympic lifting gym or CrossFit or kettlebell or something else to kind of add to my repertoire and kind of expand my physical ability. But for the first 6 months, year, 2 years, maybe 3 years, powerlifting is going to do everything that I need it to do because it's building a foundation first.
Right.
So there's no rush. Just find something you enjoy and just do that.
And I also tell people usually, like, I used to be a person who worked out on my own a lot.
Mhm.
And, you know, changes happened in life, and I've never really tried to unpack why.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it matters why. Like, I enjoy being around people more now. Like, I enjoy being in groups, working out more often than alone. And so the old me used to sort of tease the new me, like, oh, you need people to motivate you, and you need friends to hang out with while you're lifting. Like, you're not training for real. Like, you're not serious. Now, older, wiser me living the life now, it's like, that's stupid. That was just an ego,
Mhm.
position of mine. So whomever the person is searching for, these solutions, it's important that they know themselves well enough. Like, are you a person who could do your own thing, maybe with a coach providing programming, um, or do you need a group of people? Like, do you need the group accountability? Because it doesn't matter which one you are, you can still get what you want, but let's not try and pretend we're not the one we are. Like, let's not try and change ourselves. Let's just acknowledge where we're at, move
Mm,
forwards, you know?
cool, cool. All right, I think, man, that's a lot of good info. I hope anybody listening to this kind of understands a little bit about what some of the options are out there. Remember that it doesn't really matter where you get started, just start somewhere. You can always change, right? It's not like you decide I'm going to do powerlifting and you have to do that for the rest of your life, right? You can change as you grow, as you experience new things. You want to experiment and play around with stuff. That's what it's all about. I mean, that's the definition of fitness, is being able to do a variety of things.
Absolutely.
Cool. You got anything you want to add before we close out?
No, no, I feel like I've contributed plenty. I feel like, I mean, we could go down this rabbit hole deep, but we don't have
No, I think,
time.
yeah, I think for this, maybe another time, maybe we can talk more about specifics. We can get into the differences of what the actual targets of the sport are. We can get into the components of fitness and talk about how they map. What's the difference between powerlifting, what's in Olympic lifting, and where they map to the 10 components, and what's a skill versus what's a physiological adaptation. And I mean,
I think that's a good one.
we can get all into that crap, but I don't know if anybody wants to listen to us ramble on about that. So
We can make it into chunks. I think
yeah.
that's good. Like, we know a lot of people who would benefit from that information, and
Yeah.
probably wouldn't know a lot of that information.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. I'm down. Maybe next time. All
okay.
right, guys, appreciate you guys watching. We're going to try to do this on a regular basis. So if you have any suggestions on topics, we're always open for that. If you have any questions, please give us feedback and ask us questions. We would love to answer them on here, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right.